Hi, this is Miss Eglin here with Middle School Language Arts, Grade 7. And this video is for Engage New York, Module 1, Unit 1, Lesson 1. And this is the book that we will be reading. It's called A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. In this first unit, students will explore the question, how do culture, time, and place influence the development of identity? So basically, who are you based on your past experiences? The long-term targets for the entire unit are here. I can determine the central ideas of a literary text. And I would think of central idea as the theme. Okay, so what's the theme of the text? I can effectively engage in discussions with diverse partners about seventh grade topics, text, and lessons. So this is, can you work with another person? The vocabulary, scenario, determine, which we will talk about, representation, which we will talk about, central ideas, a literary text, planes, routes, and cradle. Okay, let's go on to the next slide here. Okay, so if you were not in class, you would have missed being paired up with a partner because most of the lessons in this unit ask you to think, pair, and share. So you think on your own, you get together and discuss with a partner, and then share with the whole class. Okay, so the learning targets will be posted on the board, and then we talked about this 5 to 5 technique here, which all this means is if you understand the learning targets completely, you could explain it or teach it to somebody else, you would have the whole hand open. Okay, but if you were totally clueless, had no idea what was going on, you would be this fist. And if you were somewhere in the middle, you understand it pretty well, you would be 3. Okay, and you could also do 4, 2, and then 1 is also you need some help understanding the learning targets. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Today, we began a long-term study project. Most of the work that we are going to be doing, reading, writing, thinking, it's going to be done with at least one partner. Now, it might not always be the same partner, but you will be able to talk to somebody and discuss before you share with the class. But before we introduce the topic of study, there were a couple of scenarios that partners were to discuss. So you might think, well, what is a scenario? A scenario is just a situation, something that could happen and that you need to discuss. Okay, so the first learning target, which is down here, is I can effectively participate in discussion with my classmates. So how do you talk to a partner? Do you each take a turn? Do you ask the other partner what he or she thinks? How do you do that effectively? You're not going to want to say, oh, your ideas are stupid, but you're going to treat your partner with consideration. Okay, so you would do that in class. What does it mean to effectively participate? And this is one of the main things you're supposed to learn in this first lesson, and all of these learning targets will be discussed so everybody can do all of these things, okay, in class, especially right here, this discussion 1 and explaining. Okay, so the scenarios. 1, you are 11 years old. You have been separated from your family by war. In order to survive, you must walk to an area of safety hundreds of miles away. On the journey, you must avoid soldiers and dangerous wildlife and manage to find food or water. This journey will take months. You do not know if you will survive or ever see your family again. So if this was an experience you had to live through, how do you think it would affect the person you grew up to be? Okay, because that's not an experience that many of us would have living here in America. Okay, so that's scenario one. One partner would get this, and then the other partner would get scenario two. So let's read this one together. Okay, you are 11 years old. You live with your family in an area far from towns or cities. Your family does not have any running water or electricity. You are responsible for getting water for your family to drink. To do this, you must walk 8 hours every day to a pond and back. You will have to do this every day for years and years. If this was an experience you had to live through, how do you think it would affect the person you grew up to be? Okay, so that is something that, now since you're at home or rewatching this, you could think about on your own. How do you think that would affect your life? You're not going to school, you're getting water 8 hours a day. Okay? Okay, let's move on. The second learning target, I can determine the meaning of visual representations on a map. So the two words that are italicized are determine and representations. Okay, and then we'll talk about this next one. I can read for gist as we begin chapter one in A Long Walk for Water. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, determine, if you look here, okay, means to decide after study. So, that's pretty self explanatory. So, I can figure out the meaning of visual representations on a map. Now, let's look at the word representation. Okay, the root word here is present. Okay, and that means to show or symbolize. The affixes, okay, which are re, and when we talk about prefixes, we usually use this little hyphen to indicate it's not re, it's, the re. This is the beginning sound, and then tion is the end sound, so we use that little hyphen there. But they change the meaning of the root word. So R is meaning again, like repeat, redo. You're doing something again. And then tion means the act of doing something. So when you put them together, representation, the meaning, words, the act of showing or symbolizing something again. So visualizing pictures on a map. Okay, so think about these as, symbols on a map. Okay, what does that mean? Figure that out. Okay, so you would have had some time to do this with a partner. And it helps if I'm on the arrow here. Okay. So now you would think, parents, share this with your partner. One thing I notice, will you tell me more about that? You would just jot your answers in, whatever they are. And again, we're still talking about this. Do the fist for five. How well do you think you understand that? And then I can read for gist as we begin chapter one in A Long Walk for Water. So what do we mean by gist? Okay. What does that really mean? It's not the main idea, but it's like, just what's it all about? What's the story about? Okay, and then they're giving you here a little more detail of what you could put on the chart. So you're getting this other chart. It says, I wonder, or I notice, I wonder. So when you notice something, you're just observing it. When you're wondering something, you're questioning it. So, I could say, looking around the classroom, I notice that the walls are white. And then I'm wondering, why are the classroom walls always seem to be white? They're never painted orange or pink or day glow orange. Why is that? Okay, so you're going to look at this map on the next page and then think about things that you notice or wonder, and you would write them on your chart and then connect the map back with those scenarios that were presented to you before, okay? And here, this is just giving you a little more information, and I don't know what these squares are here. Ignore those, but describe the information in the square in the right top hand corner of the map. So this is the actual map, and right here I see This is the continent of Africa. It is an entire continent. These are separate countries in Africa. Okay, Uganda, Kenya. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so Egypt's up here, north. Now, if I go back, I'm going to see what other questions are on here. Describe the information in the square in the top left-hand corner. Well, it's showing you it's a continent, and this is kind of a blow-up of some of the countries. And then, do you think these are interesting? How can there be a swampland right next to a desert? And you would kind of just study the map, okay? So I'm looking here. I'm seeing there's mountains, hills, swampland, plains, deserts, river, salvas, route. I see here, oh, here's Sudan. Oh, here's southern Sudan, Ethiopia. There's mountains here. And I'm seeing all these different things in the map, okay? That map didn't look great, so I put a picture of another map. And again, this is the whole continent of Africa, and these are the countries that they are talking about now, and it's saying water plains. Okay, so here you have this straight line with this grass here. You will learn more about the physical environment that the main characters in the novel are in. Okay, so what is this line here? What do these dots represent? All of those things you should be thinking about. Okay, and it says, do you think the dots could represent a path or route or route? And I think they're kind of hard to see on this, so I'm gonna highlight a little bit. Oops. Okay, let me go back to this. And the dots start here and go here, okay? So if these are the dots and it tells us right here, this is Salva's route. So, if he started out here and then ended up here, what does that tell you? Okay, what do you think that means? Okay, and then again, they have a think, pair, share, and then they're talking about, this handout, column 1, the chapter and page numbers, what Naya's story is about, my first ideas, and, at this point, we're like, who is Naya? We don't know. What Naya's story is about, any new ideas, what Salva's story is about, my first ideas, what Salva's story is about, any new ideas, okay? So these are your first ideas here, and then you go into other ideas. So you should have enough room to fill all of that in on your chart. Okay, and I'm going to be reading aloud just the very first part of chapter 1, and while I'm reading out loud, you are supposed to be following along, looking at the words and thinking about them, and then later you'll be able to put in your thoughts in your reader's notes, which is this page here we just talked about, okay? And let's see here. And I am just going to read the first section. And it says, Chapter 1, Southern Sudan, 2008. Going was easy. Going, the big plastic containers held only air. Tall for her 11 years, Naya could switch the handle from one hand to the other, swing the container by her side, or cradle it in both arms. She could even drag it behind her, bumping it against the ground and raising a tiny cloud of dust with each step. There was little weight going. There was only heat, the sun already baking the air. Even though it was long before noon, it would take her half the morning if she didn't stop on the way. Heat, time, and thorns. Okay, so just from that, you would go ahead and fill in number 3. Okay, column 3. And so what Naya's story is about, any new ideas, what is happening here. You would go ahead and fill that in. Okay. I would actually do 1 and 2 first, and then you could do 3. What character is this section about? So we know it's about this character, Naya. Okay. We really don't know anything about her yet. What sentence from the text gives you information that the section is about the character? So I'm looking back in the text to find out what I think. Okay, so you would write down what you think. What is this about? What do you think? That is the idea of this first lesson. Okay? And then again, we would go through the learning targets again, and you would do a self-assessment using the, 5. And then you're going to think, pair, share with your partner. What do you think a good partner should do? Maybe I think a good partner should be a good listener. I'm just throwing these out there. Be respectful. Okay. And maybe, being respectful, you're going to, if somebody has an idea, maybe be open-minded, like maybe you disagree. And, if you do disagree, you always want to go back to the text. What kind of evidence do you find in the text to support that? Okay, and those are just some ideas. You might have different ones. Okay, so that is the first lesson of Engage New York Language Arts, Grade 7, Module 1, Unit 1, Lesson 1. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please ask me via email or in class.